and drew the reinforcement move, which for the first time I'm handling correctly, moving the administrative movements on that. Now, these administrative movements, maybe there are ways of interpreting the rules strictly with them, but the way I see it is, it's in the vicinity of, and I can deploy into position with it. I just can't go into combat, I can't get too close, whatever. And I'm playing that by ear at this point. I'd come up with stricter guidelines on it, I think, as I go, and maybe I can find something stricter in the rules itself about it. It's just such a pain to look stuff up in these, but it's going to be under commands, not under the movement rules, because it's a command. And I'm not quite sure where that's going to be. There we go. Alright. Leader losses under the command rules. Administrative march, which is under what? Defining the maneuver units. Well, no, it's its own little thing under the whole. So, units may not move beyond the terminus hex unless the leader in command occupies it, in which case they may move beyond it as long as they're within his command span. And that kind of fits what I'm doing. I'm not going precisely by it, but I could have done it that way. If this, if I was playing opposed, I would play more directly by the rules there. But actually, those rules are pretty good for capturing the intention. Anyway, we're seeing these guys now. Here is where I'm putting some of those other little, hey, we want to make sure this works right. Like with the crossroads. When you have two columns of units, you can't have them both moving along the road at the same time. Now, in the game, because there's not... because you're not moving things in a pulsed fashion, it's not obvious what's happening. But sometimes in games, people will drive one set of units down the road, and that clears up a little path, and then other units will move down the road and then jump off the road. And no way, man. I don't know how, again, to write the rules so that it's explicitly that way, but I just look at it and say, no, that's bogus. If the column is moving forward, you can open up a break in the column and let other units in, and maybe they'll come off the road later, but they're not going to. You're not going to be able to double use the road by running, say Cav, which I had. I have some here, but it's not active right now. But if I had faster units, I could run them down the road and then come off from off the road into on the road. And you're allowed to be in road movement as long as you're adjacent to the road. Run down it and then jump off of it and, basically move twice as many units down the road. And again, I don't know how you write competitively ironclad rules to handle that. I don't feel like this is the kind of game where you want those kind of rules to begin with. You want your opponent to be able to say, what the fuck are you doing, dude? You can't do that. I don't care if it's in the rules or not. Just use some common sense here, right? Anyway. Although I still have all my complaints about this system that I've seen, man, when you start playing a big tactical game like this, it's just got so much for me. Watching these formations moving and starting to deploy into their lines and getting ready for the battle. It's hard for me not to just, enjoy the shit out of it, even if I've got my fairly big quibbles. And when you're looking at this beautiful map, that sure helps make up for a lot of it, but a lot of those little quibbles mean that I'm not going to necessarily be playing as carefully by the rules as I usually do, and that ain't all that careful anyway. So, but if you do see something egregious that you think's breaking the spirit of the game, especially, wow, give me a yell. Definitely. We get all the auxiliary chits out of the way. 740 turns essentially in the can at this point. A little bit of artillery fire that was effective over here. We routed that unit. And he's not going to get a chance to recover. When I did the what is it called? The regroup check, which I think covers all units that aren't actually in under command. Well, I don't think there's anything I could really do with any of them. I haven't located and identified any units that I've accidentally left behind or anything like that. And generally, accidentally, you can probably fudge, but in particular, sometimes formations get broken, and that's when you don't want to give that. But I think I've got everything actually kind of under command. I'm not sure. Kind of worried here. What kind of general do I have here? Pirch. I think he's only got a 3 hex radius, so I think he better not be there. Because this is all his command, but I've just forgotten to move him as far as I should. So I should probably have him, let's put him back here. He certainly could have moved there, and that allows him to put these units in command, and they're all adjacent. This unit wouldn't be in command there. Let's push him another hex. Just fudging things a little bit. Again, you know, I probably would make the same kind of mistakes normally. I also made another mistake with this unit. I forgot to move it. That should have moved during the reinforcements check, but I forgot I had it. Now, again, if I was more familiar with the system, I might let errors like that stand. Those are indicative of the kind of, screwing up something like that, and I think the time limit's part of why you'd want, why you want to kind of create that kind of tension. Those are the kind of things that games like NBS have with, failures of orders to arrive, foot dragging type stuff, all kind of stuff like that. Well, if you leave it up to the players to make their own mistakes and forget units, that's kind of cool. However, since this is my first play, and I think I'm going to be really, really prone to making lots of errors anyway, and I'll probably forget things and not notice them sometimes until it's too late to fix it, I'm going to be pretty lenient about the things that I can fix quickly. So these guys I pushed forward out of there, and I had to look at the command because there's some cav that I had out here that's part of that command and would have been in command as well. So they moved as well, even though I wasn't so sure that they were that. So yeah, we're seeing things develop. A definite little firefight over here. Again, I'm not comfortable with how ragged that looks. I feel like I'm doing something wrong, but I can't face the rules to the degree to really try to track down if there is anything. So far, I haven't been able to find anything. We'll see. Maybe somebody will tell me something, or maybe maybe I'll find it on my own, looking for other things. I've found other stuff that way. Elsewhere, a little cav battle here. And otherwise, it's really just the Allied forces beginning to deploy and get ready for the assault. And the French forces, wow, they're sure outnumbered. I'll tell you that much. But there's some time, and not all the Allied forces can move yet. And there's a whole bunch of French coming in today. There's more Allied forces than I've got deployed. Like, I've got some of them on the map. There's ones that come in anytime after 3 p.m. And I'm going to hunt them down at some point and kind of stack them near here as well, just so that I have the organizational sheets more correct. The problem is I have to try to figure out what comes in on the 27th and 28th. Probably nothing on the 28th, but I know there's more reinforcements on the 27th because the 28th is an optional day. The actual fight wasn't there. As you can see, 26th and 27th. They do the 25th also, but there's not much going on there. Just that one little skirmish on the windmill. But the problem is these charts have units on them that are not available, that are not dead, but look like they're dead. So something like this looks like it's dead. And, another problem is, I don't know if I've accounted for everything from the first day. When you look at a set of instructions like this with reinforcements, etc., it's pretty easy to miss something. So it's quite possible that I've got a unit that should be on the board that's not yet, and may never make it. And unless I'm capable of setting up the whole reinforcement track for a game, which I do with most games, but it's so hard to figure out the placement and reinforcements on this one, especially since there are separate scenarios. Essentially, there's no grand scenario. Here's the setup and reinforcement chart. It's much better for me. I like what the gamers do with their, big tactical games, which is, here's the master reinforcement chart. Here's everything that comes on the map and when it does. And you might have units that leave the map and come back, but they'll be really specially noted in there. And then each scenario has its setup, and you don't worry about the reinforcements on the master reinforcement chart that come in at different times. But here they separate it into, these different scenarios where you have to piece it together. I had that same problem with another, with Der Weltkrieg, the World War I series, where, there's sort of, it's hard to tell when reinforcements come in and when they don't. But I think that actually had a master reinforcement chart. I think it just had a lot of errors in it or something. I don't remember. I remember it was really hard to piece together what's going on in it. And I felt the same kind of frustration as I do with this. So, whatever. But, made it through another turn, no? We're at an hour. It's 8 o'clock. That means it's time to check morale. Well, we haven't lost any units, so we don't have to worry about it. I do have to worry about some of the units have some losses on them, and that starts affecting their individual morale. And I have to kind of keep that in mind. Largely, I don't bother looking that up, but if I get a roll that's kind of close, like, is there, a modifier? Well, the problem is some of those modifiers are pretty big. Like, I think the smallest one is 3 points, but like 9-point modifiers. So it's not, I may be, giving myself too much leeway on those. I managed to set up I don't think I'm done with it. I started setting up the Allied forces. I think I got more to do. Yeah, I got the Allied reserve column to do here. And that's it. And the Prussian Guard. But I did decide, okay, could I possibly pull everything off? And the answer is kind of no. Because the way the scenario works, the grand campaign or whatever, is you set up each scenario individually. Which is to say, I don't keep whatever position I have at the end of a night. I fall back to whatever the historical situation is, unless I've won the game. And so it's possible that units will appear and disappear between scenarios and such not. There's also some recovery and everything. To me, this is a little unsatisfying, because what I prefer is, again, if you're going to do a several-day battle, let me do the mechanical aspects of that recovery. Let me gather those units at night, whatever. Let me do it during the day at times. I like straggler recovery and stuff like that in a system, and this one doesn't have that. Instead, what it says is, okay, the day's fighting is done, and the units will go to where they historically deployed on that day, rather than, to where the strategic situation kind of would dictate. That's disturbing. That's very disturbing to me. Anyway, right now, we're just throwing units at each other to try to gain an advantage. I'm not even quite sure what the victory conditions are for this day. But that's okay. I mean, again, I'm trying to get a feel for about the game and the system in a way that doesn't really doesn't really allow for much of that competitive feel to a game. And honestly, I usually am not all that heavily into such things. But apparently, I'm not a serious wargamer though, because I don't favor World War II Eastern Front, and in particular, I don't favor competitive games based on that. Whatever. All right. I don't know where we are here. I guess we're starting the new turn. Well, I'm still doing the reinforcements. Okay. Some more units activating. Another command over here getting thrown into play. We gave them some orders. Honestly, I don't know where he sits in the structure, so like I might have been able to include him under this and defined the movement unit. The problem with that is I've already defined this movement unit for an administrative march. I don't think I can just start tagging more units into that without throwing a command into play. And these guys are certainly not under command of that. These are all left wing of the Bohemian. This is right wing. So I don't think whoever his overall commander is actually in play. If I can figure out who he is, that's something maybe I'll get more comfortable with, but at this point I'm not being able to identify what's where. Throwing out my commands, had one problem. Needed to use the one French command point over there still, because that's where the bloodletting's happening. Well, Pajols, I don't know, did not get his success, which could be a serious problem for him, because the Austrians or are those even Austrian? Let's get this out of there. There's a real problem with counters lasting between turns. Anyway, we're ready to start. So right now I'm segmenting a turn where the Allied force chit was picked. I started moving some units, deploying them up here, fired my artillery to some effect. We're at range now where it's actually doing some good. I caused 2 casualties, disordered this thing. Got my ammo back. Yeah, I'm doing things out of order there, but it's the only way I can keep track of things at this stage in the game. And then I jumped over here. Now I wanted to do that, but I don't have the time to do that. So I thought I'd do this because it's simpler. And I launched a charge. A countercharge was done. I started looking up the rolls, and I misstated with my melee. It looks like you use the whole melee value and then prorate it, divide it up among the hexes. So it doesn't really matter to expand your force. You still hit with the full value or not. I remembered something which said you use the full value per hex. I don't remember what that is. It may be just skirmisher fire. I'm going to try to reconcile and figure that out. But as of right now, all I can tell, I thought it was Cav spreading out. They got their full strength in every hex, but I can't find that rule. And it seems a little weird, but I don't know. Anyway, so we were countercharged. Neither side is getting the charge bonus of 3 straight hexes because they were close enough. But then I've got some losses on these guys. So they have a strength of, I think they get the +7 in each hex. They have a strength of 49, but 2 of their 14 strength points were lost. So, let's see what we got here. 12 divided by 14, right? Is that right? No. So what I want is the ratio. I'm trying to remember how to do this because I've got 12 strength points actually there out of 14. So that's what I want is I'm having trouble thinking. 14 divided by 12, I think. Nope. Seems wrong. 12 divided by 14, that doesn't seem right either. Yeah, that's what I want. 12/14ths. So that gives me this as the ratio. And now my actual strength is 49. So I multiply that by 49. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble thinking. And that rounds to 42. And now I got to check and hope my battery, my calculator likes to turn off. Even though it's solar powered, I don't understand that. But that's his strength. Now he's at full strength and does not have lances. So he looks like he's just a 21. That's not going to be good. But I do have a leader here, which is going to give me a 2-point benefit. I have to look up the lances, see if I just get 7. Well, no, I'm doubled, so I get 14. But is it 14 or 14 per hex? It's per hex. So now I've got a 4-to-1 attack. This guy's actually the attacker because he countercharged or opportunity charged. I can't remember which one's which. But there's a -2 to the die roll because of the leader. 65, 66, we have a possible leader casualty. So let's go over here, 64 or higher. Oh, natural die rolls 11, yeah, depending on the side, I guess. Right, okay. So it's 31 minus 2 takes us down to 26, 25. And that's going to be a defender disordered. This guy's going to be disordered and flung back. And remember, he takes a casualty for that. Worked out not to be a great result. I flipped this thing over to remind me that I've done a charge there. I've got some extra counters, might as well use them. But these guys are fatigued, and now I can't recover them because he's pushed forward. These guys could wheel around and do a standard melee. However, actually, I'm not even sure. Yeah, I think they can. However, they have to go around the line grabbing, and that'll mean they're turning their rear right to the French line, and that doesn't sound like a good idea at all. So, hey, these guys didn't withdraw enough, did they? What the hell did I do? They should be going back like 7 hexes, right? No, they're very tired. So their movement is, I think, a third, which is 5, and then that's cut in half for the withdrawal. So I should be another hex back, though. Okay. Anyway, I don't know why I retreated just 2 hexes. It's weird. Yeah, no, I'm pretty much done with these guys, so we'll drop this here. Now I can go do the other things I have to do or want to do that, prevent me from doing a whole shit in one sitting. You can see why I can't do the 10-minute roll, right? Fortunately, I didn't pay much attention when I defined my command down here. And trying to see if there was a shit that I didn't need, but I think I used them all elsewhere. I threw down a command sheet thinking that Wittgenstein would have everything under command, and maybe he's never really had it all, but I think he has because I had a fairly solid line. But the breakthroughs that the French put here and over here have kind of slapped up that line a little bit. So unfortunately, Wittgenstein's back here, which is not exactly where I want him. And he was the person I intended to give this command to. Alternatively, I could have given it to Roth. But Roth has sort of this section in his command. This is the more important area where I'm getting broken through. I also have another problem here, which is my cav is not really in charge range. Which is to say I can charge, but I'm not going to get the full bonus off of it. So I'm trying to consider, I actually already started moving some of these skirmishers, but we can forget about that for a moment and consider whether or not we want to try to charge that infantry. These are heavy. These are lights. I'm going to have to look at the interactions, because without understanding the full, consequences of what I'd be doing, it could be really stupid. I don't have to just charge straight in. I believe I'm allowed to kind of play around and maybe swerve around and get a flank attack and charge or something like that. So, maybe it'll work. We declared a charge and started curving around and coming around on this. And as we got into range where we can declare our target, the French have a chance to create a square. Now, the question is, did I want to do it back here? I think it wasn't obvious until they turned and moved this way exactly where they were going to go. So we're in a 2 hex range, the target's declared, and normally we'd do it on 11 to 51. However, this is a French provisional line from the 14th Corps. Now this is interesting. This is the provisional line here from the 14th Corps. There's not a lot of provisional line units. However, there's some over here in the 6th Corps. And I don't know why the 14th is being singled out as being problematic. Whether they're... I can see 2 possibilities here. One is that the 6th Corps doesn't actually make it to the board until the 28th, in which case I would consider their provisional line probably as questionable. Another is that the 14th was just poorly trained, and I don't know the answer there. Maybe the 6th Corps had time to train their forces, and if I find out that the 6th Corps is indeed coming in on the 28th, I'm going to try to look into that to decide whether or not something else should be done. But anyway, that's a +6 to the die roll, and remember it's on base 10. So we'll see if he makes it, and oh boy, he does not. So he's going to be PGD'd. He actually rolled 76, I believe. And he'll flee. Now this is weird because I don't believe he actually gets to run away. I gotta take a look at that. I believe there's a possibility for pursuit now. Now, if the if the Russians choose, they can try to recall their cav. Tire it out less or whatever. On the other hand, smacking the crap out of that unit might be a good thing. So I have the opportunity to try to make a recall attempt. If I don't, these guys just, or if I do, these guys just run away. And, I've done my job, but maybe it's not entirely what I would have hoped for. However, if I charge them, then, or if I continue with a pursuit, what happens is we're going to do distance in hexes between the charging unit and the infantry, minus the current movement potential, and there's a 5-point charge bonus. So I got to figure this out. This guy had an 11, minus 2 for being in line was 9, and he went 1, 2, 3, 4 of that. So he's got 10. I'm 2 away. That gives me 8. It's a positive number divided by 3, or 2 if the infantry is PGD. So we're at, I believe, 4, and that'll be the number of casualties that I cause. However, my cav will then be routed for not contacting, and tired too. I think casualties sound like a good idea in this situation. I don't really just want to bounce that thing. I want to hurt them. So, let's proceed. Let's see what happens. Finish the path of retreat of the infantry, deducting the first hex from the beginning, mentioned at the beginning of the paragraph. If the number is 0 or negative, no pursuit losses. Huh? Finish the path of retreat of the infantry, deducting the first hex mentioned. Okay, so first we didn't get this. Okay, so first this gets to retreat a hex. And here's a problem. There's Russian units here. I retreat here now. I don't get opportunity fire because this is involuntary movement. Okay, so I'm actually 3 away. So that number would not be 8, it would be 7. So it's only going to be 3 casualties. I'm still going to do that. I'm going to hit this with 3. And now he went 1. We get to keep fleeing. Wow, I'm cluttered. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've got a morale check on this guy. I'm going to have to look up the modifiers on that. This guy charged forward into this hex, and now he disordered, or gets one of these. Oops, I put an assault instead of a charge on him. And I believe he's going to retreat his full 11 hexes now. Why is that not the case? 9 hexes. But he's fatigued, so that's halved or thirded, I'm not sure which. So it's not going to be that many. Anyway, I'm going to get offline because I'm just kind of having to look too much up. Oh no, this is for standing against a charge. I don't think I've taken these into account previously. So this is the modifiers for the assaults based on the odds. So you might not actually get to an assault if the odds are heavy enough. You might just knock them out of there now. You may still get that. I'm not sure. God, this is a pain in the butt. What I'm looking for right now is, wow, here's another roll to stand in the face of a charge. What the hell? So I've got roll to stand against a charge and then roll to stand against a charge. And there are different values here. Like, so this is minus 12 through a flank hex side. That's the same. Rear is minus 6. That's the same. That's kind of weird, but I've already talked about that. And the movement potential is not here. Wow. And yeah, charge à cheval is a charge. So we got kind of 2 different charts here. This one seems more extensive, but there's at least 1 entry. I mean, there's only 3 entries. There's 1 entry that didn't make it into that one. I don't know if you're supposed to combine these or what. Okay, great. So I don't remember even what I was trying to... Oh, I'm trying to look to find a morale modifier. I know there's a chart of morale modifiers somewhere. Well, obviously there's more than one. They're kind of scattered in different places. Okay, so we have other modifiers here. Yeah. Somewhere in stacking, because that's what we just had. Here we go. Okay. Not giving the morale checks here. There's basically a morale check for stacking, and I don't remember. I think there's a modifier for somebody PGD running through you, but I can't find that. Maybe it's in the rolls and not on the charts. That's where it is, and we got a minus 12. It's this guy. Oh no, it's this guy we ran through. So he's a 26. It's going to be minus 12 off the die roll, I guess. So let's roll this. So 31, 12 off of 31 is going to be less than 26, because that's basically 2. So this guy disorders. He doesn't fully route, I don't think. And he's going to go back 4. Okay. And that was pretty successful. No big deal, but I can't handle this section unit by unit. Basically, all the units under command are going to have to move. Now, these guys are under administrative march, but these guys are under command. And the reason for this, why I have to do them the way I do, is because defensive and offensive fire can have some interaction over that entire section. So splitting things up the way I did, it works okay when I'm looking at something like this or down there. But when I'm starting to look at where there's a lot of potential for interaction, I have to kind of handle things in an integrated fashion. It's not a big deal. I'm not going to be doing any cav charges over here, I don't believe. I'm waiting for these guys to line up. Really, the only reason there's fighting going on is the French launched an attack. Best as I can tell, these skirmishers are not going to be engaging. I'm a little confused about the defensive-offensive fire thing, because it makes sense when I'm... Because of the fact that a chit affects specific units, it makes sense to see defensive and offensive fire against those units. What doesn't really make sense is what's going on down here. I think the French get their defensive fire, but do we get offensive fire with these skirmishers? I'm really not sure how that's supposed to be handled. I'm going to look in the regs, which uses a different orders system, the standard kind of chit pull, see how they do it. Because basically, the offensive, both fires don't really make sense except in the context of the activation. And these guys here were not activated, yet they're within range that they could fire. Anyway, you can see that the Russians have largely thrown back the French. This guy stood, I guess. Trying to remember if I made a roll for him. He certainly took a casualty. He got fired on by both of these. But beyond the fact that we flung the French back, I'm not sure. So, for example, if we were up here and out of command, would we get to trade shots, or would we sit there and kind of smoke some weed together? Would the defensive fire be allowed to happen? How many, And these are just questions that I don't really understand, and it's all based on this kind of weird pulsing where, yeah, this unit, part of this and this, the artillery up there, those are the things that activated. This hasn't activated yet. I would much rather see a pure I go, you go, get rid of that reinforcement, and get rid of a couple of the special counters, I think, because I don't think that they really help that much. Although the reinforcement does help disrupt the deployment circumstances. And that's kind of interesting, but it doesn't do anything. It doesn't work well in terms of out-of-command units being able to be handled properly. Now, maybe they just don't get a shot, but what about the defensive fire in that case? Would that have gotten a shot? We don't have that in this circumstance, but we'll see if I can figure this out, or at least something that makes some sense. Okay, so the way it looks to me is that we actually have this kind of stated clearly here. It just doesn't work well with my understanding. It doesn't conform to what I'd expect. Let me see if I can find it here. When all activity associated with an active side's movement has ceased, all inactive units conduct defensive fire, and then all active units conduct offensive fire. Now, defensive fire, remember, is only allowed within 1 hex range. So, unless you're doing counter battery fire, you're not going to see the artillery pounding each other. During the artillery is not going to get a defensive fire phase. So what that means to me is that even though these were inactive, they're still going to be active enough to do some quick skirmishing. And that's fine. The admin movement shit is next. And I'm just kind of wondering, geez, did I do a recovery check on him? And I don't believe I did, and he should be checking for disorder because he should either be fully routed. Actually, he should be fully routed, but he should have a disorder check made on him. So he's fatigued. That drops him to a 3rd. That was 4. I think he's another hex back. But he does have another check. He has a check to make during the rally phase that I think I must have skipped. Okay. Beginning to deploy whoever the hell this is. You know, I can't tell. It's a guy with this uniform. Yeah, right? It's from P. Okay. They don't have names on here. I don't know. No, it's Ethan. It's Ethan's unit. But it's also Kleist. But Kleist, I think, is in command of this stuff. Again, it's not entirely sure. I'd have to hunt down, find the right leader, counter flip it over, see who it is, to try to guess, to try to figure out who it is. But I think it might be these guys. So, I mean, if it's anything over here, and I can't see what else it could be, it's under Kleist. So this is only going to take 1 shit for the assault. That other unit is the advanced guard over here. That's going to require another chit. I don't have anyone who commands... Well, Barclay de Tolly does, if I can find him, but I don't think he's on the board yet. Who commands all of this. Over here, got a couple of columns. Now these are all not under the same person. This stuff's part of the right wing. But the overall commander of whatever the fuck this is, now Gilai's that, so that would be who? Probably Schwarzberg, but I don't know where he is on this chart. He's who I would guess is in charge. I can't find him though. Oh, there he is. So yeah, this is part of the Army of Bohemia. Schwarzenberg's over here. So I might want to, in one of these leader segments, fling him and his command over into that general area. This is the problem I have with radius-based command rules, is you do stupid shit. In the NBS, you would never move Schwarzenberg. He would sit where he historically sat with the other commanders. They would confer and send out orders, you know. And actually, even NBS doesn't handle it well enough because, or TWB for that matter, because what we would actually have is the general of this in range of these guys so he can write orders for them. The general over here in range over there. Preferably you'd have something where they can't coordinate as well. Unless they're together. And even if they're together, they probably should have to roll some kind of agreement given Austerlitz. But anyway, it works, you know. It just gives you some unreasonable assumptions that generals are going to run off and be near the troops that they're in command of at all times. When, you know, this is what gives the best view of the battlefield. So that's where, historically, they park all the commanders. Plus, there's a nice monument that can sit there. We got these guys moving up into here. A bit of traffic jam here, no question. I can't get these guys on the road because of this, and then I've got units in the way here. Gotta be careful not to let these little papers blow. I had that happen with one of these. And I need to have the windows open. Alright. Still got the French shit to come. And other than that, I don't know. The loose units, which don't get to fire. And I mean, I don't know. You know, should they get should the recovery be handled the same as the fire combat? Why is the fire combat? I just really don't know. It's like this system doesn't make a lot of sense when you're moving, you know, large amounts of units under the out of command type rules, which is true about everything over here. And I am going to want to shift those towards their command. They're actually in command now, but I want to shift them to make room for more of those Prussians. And I guess that's about it. On a command shit, the French leave Kota and are starting to make their way over to Friedrichstadt. I don't see any way of doing it. Just like with the windmills, I don't see any chance of stopping a large force from coming forward. Or, you know, with one unit or whatever. And the Russians trying to get this in order, and you can see everybody's going every which way as I'm pulling those units towards Wittgenstein. So, because I have room for the Prussians to fill in the gap here. Really, I've assigned too little space to the Prussians, and I'm going to have to stretch their front out or make it deeper or something like that, because there's just not a lot of room there for the attack. But I want to hit with enough force that I can break through, and we can see here that reserves are fairly important because the lines become jagged really quickly. They don't hold very well. And that's it for the 8 o'clock turn. Some of the battery fire was vaguely effective. I'm not sure what are howitzers. I think there's some Prussian howitzers, but I don't think these things are howitzers. They look like long guns to me, but it's hard to tell. Mortars are specified, and I believe they're these suckers. But again, I'm not absolutely positive. The game doesn't really, nothing on the counter says it's a howitzer to me, so, and nothing in the rules that I could find. And these are difficult to hunt through and find things, especially since the rules that would indicate what's a howitzer, what's not, are embedded in the base rules, I think, or maybe they're in the specific rules, but it's just really impossible for me to figure out. So there are some special rules for howitzers and mortars, and I did not apply them to those guns because I can't be sure what they are. The French over here kind of repulsed some of the Russian advance. It still feels a little funny. I mean, it doesn't feel like it quite works, but I gotta tell you, a lot of the minis games don't either to me, in the sense that sometimes things seem too dramatic in the way that units flying back are seeming a little too dramatic here. Largely we rallied the French forces though, and we scattered some of those skirmishers, managed to make a little bit of chaos. I don't think it has any real effect in the end because there's going to be enough Russian units to launch the attack when the attack comes. And whatever disruption we're creating, I mean, even though we basically knocked 3 units back with one shot because of like colliding, running through each other and stuff like that, it'll recover. It's pretty easy to get things back on the line in this. And that's fine. It's a lot of effort as units run back and forth. What's not as fine is the big gaps in the line. Those, they may have some nice effects, but they feel a little funny to me. The nice effects being, of course, the need for reserves that you don't have in a lot of tactical games because units just stand in the line for too long. So we'll see. And I think that's all we did. So up. You know, I don't know if I should start, send this fucker up. I think I can do a turn quickly, but who knows. Coalition got the first activation shit. Moved to a shit. Sorry about that. Moved some of the units, trying to put a threat here on Friedrichstadt. The Cav, not much I can do with them. I'm just trying to kind of put a threat on Pahal. Maybe he'll stick around too long because I'm cutting his positioning off. Of course, you can always flee this way. But his stance there is beginning to look a little suspect. And most of the stuff over here is moving in the administrative reinforcements phase. But over here, we have the push forward, the Prussians extending out to the Landgraben, basically. That leaves the Russians with this section, which they're really not as strong as the Prussians. You can see the Prussians are making assaults all throughout the garden. They're not as strong as the Prussians, but these guys are a little disordered from their attacks, and I think I'll be able to hold my own against them at the very least. And as this begins to collapse, well, this position becomes, again, not really tenuous. It becomes tenuous. It becomes not really, and I don't remember the word I wanted to use, but they're going to have to fall back is basically the situation. And then maybe I'll swarm because I have too many Prussians. Like this column here, I didn't even, it didn't move its full movement allowance, but I'm having some trouble deploying beyond the Landgraben. So I've got some skirmishers positioned in front to continue plinking. These are French line. This stuff's reserved for provisional or whatever. So I'm expecting this stuff's going to collapse, and then this stuff will probably fall back and give me some heartburn over in this city. And what the hell is this thing? He's supposed to set up there. I don't know. He's part of the garrison, but whatever. All right, and now we'll actually resolve the assaults. I've done everything over here, so like there were no cav charges or anything. And I didn't do any cav charges here either. The Russians had an opening. They could have pushed somebody through maybe, but again, I kind of don't want to use up my cav too much. Although, when it comes down to the siege side of things, if we actually get into the city, cav's going to be useless. I may have been a little mistaken, and this is because it's not clear what's what. These units here are Landwehr. They look kind of like these. That's what that cross means, I guess. I'm not absolutely positive of these things, but they're not going to be particularly useful. They actually fire by a different method than normal line units or whatever. Normal line units, they're allowed to have 4 increments in a hex. They get a multiplier based on that. These suckers, they just get whatever their firepower is on here, which is, I believe, just 4, which is pretty damn crappy. For the most part, we've seen some pretty effective fire from both sides in terms of the die rolls, and pretty lousy morale checks in terms of the die rolls. The morale checks are 50-50 for some of these units, so that's not that great. But you can see some of the Prussians were driven back here, but on the other hand, the French were driven back, and these guys knocked back. So some of those assaults aren't going to happen, and a lot less than we thought, actually. Remaining assaults were determined before contact, and I forgot something about when you withdraw from a zone, it counts as a movement point in that zone. So everybody who disordered this turn, more or less, there may be this guy not the case, but most of the units that disordered this turn took an extra hit that I hadn't accounted for. So these guys, took maybe a quarter of their strength in losses. Those aren't all casualties. Some of them are going to be deserters, stragglers, whatever, that get picked up between days of the battle. So our net was, let's get this back, and the French are really thinly spread, which is part of the problem here. But our net effect from the two assaults was the French withdrew from this one, and the Prussians failed to get a go-in check, so they did not advance. And likewise, on the other side, the Prussians disordered here on their way in. I think that's correct. Let me make sure of that. They may not actually disorder. They may just fail to assault. I had it right. The former was correct. They actually disorder. And then I did my rallying attempts and recovery. I actually did a cav recovery beforehand because that is easier during movement if things are... I fudge around with the ordering for simplicity's sake, really. Some of the Prussian units, like I said, they're landwehr. They're not very good, and they're falling back deeper. But others are recovering. So, we got this weird kind of bouncing in and out of combat and stuff like that, which is it's definitely a bouncier game than most. And people complain about, say, the Berg games or even Dean Essex games, that units route and come back into the line a little too quickly. This kind of feels that way in the same sort of fashion, a little bit further in that direction. I'm not used to the lines just collapsing like this all over the place and then, reforming pretty easily. Big Allied columns are really finding themselves in some serious traffic jam problem where maybe moving half the distance I can with some of them at most. And then the French got their chit. Pajols pulls back a little bit. It's just looking, impossible to stand. I could face that cav, but I can't face a bunch of skirmishers trying to outflank me. And then the threat from back here as well. I think I want to get across this stream because it's kind of hard to cross even so. But that almost surrenders the entryway to the city up there. And I don't think I can hold it, so I probably should get the hell out of Dodge. I worked so hard to get there. And the problem with all that is I got one command chit. If that's where I use it, I don't get to use it to react here. And as it is, the units in the garden aren't really able to do a whole hell of a lot. I think I kind of cheated and traded some fire here that I shouldn't have, but it doesn't look like it did a damn thing. There was some fire over here, moderately effective. And the French still have a line there, but nothing, I don't know. The real problem is if this breaks, I kind of got to fall back. And that looks like it's not going to stand solid, even with those landwehr hitting it. I'm trying to think what other pieces I have. I don't know. And as we push into the 840 turn, I've pulled the command chutes already. Not too much different. I've got this available, but I don't have enough command points with the Allies to use that. I'm using 2 over here, 1, 2, 3 here, and then the choice came down to, do I give, plus, whatever chits I have out for administrative movement, which it's going to get even harder to get the whole army moving at once. But I'm giving the artillery a point instead of giving these guys the point. These guys could march over and maybe support an assault in that direction. But I kind of don't like weakening the center. Not for any great reason, but if the French try to do something tricky here, hey, now I am available to threaten them. And that wouldn't be the case if I start moving that way. Then I'm kind of opening things up, and maybe there's an opportunity to, snag some units over here or something. I'm not too impressed with the French army's capability, as weak and spread out as it is, to be able to do much. In fact, the French have a real command problem too. They got one chit over there. Pujols gets his roll for a chit. I need a chit for these guys to move them. So I may have to weaken my defense here for, a turn while I'm waiting. Anyway, I think we're going to send this one up. Because it's time.